Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to head through to Glasgow once again and have a look at yet another brewery who I had never tried anything from before. And this brewery comes particularly highly recommended from the guys at Valhalla's Goat, which is an awesome beer shop through in Kelvinbridge in Glasgow. Make sure you check out their Facebook link in the description below. But for this review we are going to go for the first time to Marchant City Brewing Company and we're having a look at their Jaggery Imperial Stout today. So this one comes in at 7.4% ABV, so a little bit low on the alcohol scale for an Imperial Stout generally, but this is one that they've played around with a hell of a lot, and there's different kind of barrel-aged versions of this. I'm sure I saw a Glenfarclas barrel-aged version of this beer listed on their website too, but it's quite highly rated. It's got good ratings on Untappd and Rate Beer, so I thought this was a good place to start with this brewery. This one initially started out as one of their pilot beers that they do, but very much looking forward to trying this one. It's always cool to introduce you guys to new Scottish breweries as well, and I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So yeah, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Marchant City Brewing Company. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, of course. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Marchant City Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So as I mentioned to you earlier, Marchant City Brewing are based in Glasgow and they were founded back in November 2016 by Alan Rimmer and Douglas Wheatley. So Douglas has a background in property investment in Glasgow, and he's also the director of an investment company as well. From my research I wasn't able to find out what Alan did before he actually started up the brewery. I emailed them and they just didn't respond either, so unfortunately I wasn't able to find out exactly what Alan does, but both of these guys have worked in the Marchant City area of Glasgow for a good number of years, hence why they decided to go with the name Marchant City Brewing Company. It's quite a recognisable place in Glasgow actually. But the head office of the company is in the Italian Centre in Marchant City, and they brew their beers at their brewery in Maryhill, which can be found in the Oakbank Industrial Estate. Maryhill, of course, is famous for Partick Thistle, nice little football club actually. But the head brewer at the company is Alan Gray, who's a graduate of the Heriot Watt programme of Brewing and Distilling, and he previously worked for Windswept up in Lossiemouth, Stewart Brewing through in Edinburgh, Eden Mill, who are out near St Andrews, and then Knopsbeer, who I believe are also from the Edinburgh area. But they also bought their brewing equipment and intellectual property from Big Rabbit Brewery down in Devon. They moved the Big Devon brand basically to Glasgow and then created their own brand alongside that, as far as I understand. But as of September 2019, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced over 40 different types of beers of various different styles. There's IPAs, Vienna lagers, a whole host of different things in there, and at the moment they're looking to expand their capacity even further, and they're trying to start exporting their beers as well. They said they were particularly targeting France and trying to get their beers into like ski resorts and things like this, but they also hope to have a purpose-built facility in the future, and they want to use containers and actually make a little pop-up bar in the Marchant City as well. So hopefully that's something that comes to fruition over the next little while, and maybe I can visit that the next time I'm back home in Scotland. But yeah, a very new Scottish craft brewery. This one only been around for, you know, about 2 years or so. They've only really been around for around that kind of length of time, but a very, very interesting company, and one that you should have a go at if you get the chance to try some of their beers. Like I say, I've heard that this one is pretty good, and they use this particular stout, you know, they use the base of this stout to age it in different barrels and things like this, and it's apparently very well regarded. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Marchant City Brewing for the moment. That was all I was able to find on these guys in the newspapers and stuff like this. They didn't have much listed on their website, which was a bit unfortunate, and as I say, I emailed them and nobody emailed me back giving me information, so that was a bit disappointing. But yeah, if you want to learn more, of course, you can check out their website. As I say, there's not too much there, but you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram. That'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can follow them on Rate Beer and Untappd as well, and that'll give you the list of all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork quickly before we open open this up. As I said to you, this beer started its life off as part of their pilot series, batch number 4, and I think, like I said, they've also aged this one in Glenfarclas casks and loads of other types of things. There you can see the Merchant City bottle cap on this one, a nice kind of bright silver one, but overall it looks pretty nice. It says on the back here, a big dark strong stout made with Jaggery, a golden brown non-centrifugal cane sugar, brewed with 6 different types of grain and infused with cold brew coffee. This beer is a full-bodied, well-balanced, roasty after-dinner treat. The malt base in this one is pale chocolate malt, roasted barley, wheat, flaked barley and roasted oats, and the hops are Bramling's Cross, which are actually pretty good when it comes to Imperial stouts and things. They always give you some really nice kind of fruity flavours. But like I say, I have never heard of this Jaggery cane sugar actually. I don't know if they use that in rums and things, because it is sugar cane that rum is distilled from basically. But yeah, interesting presentation of this one. As I say, part of their pilot series originally, but quite a highly rated stout this one. You know, it's 7.4%. I'm not sure if you technically can call this an Imperial stout. I guess in terms of the traditional beers, you can see a nice smoky opening with this one, but I guess in terms of the traditional beers, you would perhaps consider this one an Imperial stout, but most Imperial stouts these days tend to hit at minimum 8%, so you know, this one is, to me at least, just a regular stout. But yeah, I don't know whether these guys align themselves with the more American style of craft breweries, or if they're kind of aligning themselves with a little bit more of the traditional kind of thing. But 7.4% these days is a little bit lower in alcohol for an Imperial stout. But the main point, you can debate the styles all day. The main thing really in these reviews is to talk about the flavour. But as you can see with this beer, it's poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If I shine the light through it, it does have a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it, but otherwise it is pretty much kind of pitch black. You can see there's a solid 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say quite dark tan head on this one. Just look at that, the colour of this head is pretty impressive here. But 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, quite a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there, and I'm guessing by the lack of light coming through this beer, that will be partially due to the colour, but this beer will also be pretty damn hazy, I would guess, as well. So yeah, let's take a look at the aroma and see how we get on. Nothing particularly surprising about this beer about its appearance when you consider that it is a stout beer. So let's have a look at the aroma and see how we get on. Oh, that smells pretty nice actually. So yeah, straight away you're going to notice the coffee smoothness out of this one. Now, as I was learning from Overtone Brewery and one of their beers that I had recently, when it comes to coffee beans, the flavours that you get out of coffee beans are dependent on what height above sea level you actually grow the coffee beans. Apparently if you grow them above, is it 2,000 metres or 2,000 feet? If you grow them above 2,000, I think it's metres, if you grow them above 2,000 metres, you really start to get some very kind of fruity flavours and stuff out of them. So coffee aromas and flavours are all dependent on the height that it's grown at. With the coffee that's in here, there is a nice little bit of earthiness to it, but you can pick up a little bit of a sort of floral note to the coffee as well. But coffee beans can really add a hell of a lot of complexity to stouts when you add them in there, and you can smell that straight away in this one. You've got a nice roasty earthiness, but you've also got that lovely, quite floral and almost quite citrusy note coming out of the coffee bean there as well. But some nice high cocoa chocolate in there. I would say an 80-90% cocoa, but at the same time underneath you can pick out a few little bits of a more milky sort of chocolatey note in there too. Definitely some brown sugars. The Jaggery cane coming out. The brown sugars come out kind of on the front of your nose, if that makes sense. And it comes across as being quite sweet, but at the same time quite almost like wafery. It almost reminds me of like when you put caramel sauce on a wafer biscuit and then eat it. The aroma of this, the brown sugars in this beer really kind of reminds me of that. There are a few sort of undertones of like, you know, kind of nutty qualities. It's almost a little touch leathery as well, to be honest with you. So yeah, a little bit of a nutty quality in there, a little bit leathery, and you've also got some nice woody qualities as well. But all of it mixes together. I mean, the coffee beans really sort of form the linchpin of the beer, and everything else almost appears as if it's a kind of complexity of the coffee beans that are in there. That's a really interesting aroma. I mean, at 7.4%, like I said, this is quite a low alcohol stout compared to others, or imperial stout compared to others, but the coffee beans really give you a level of complexity that you would expect of something that's a little bit higher in alcohol. So in some ways that kind of cancels it out, and there does seem to be a bit of a focus these days on taking the alcohol content of craft beers down so that people can session them more. A lot of people want big flavour but low alcohol when it comes to beer these days. So yeah, lovely aroma this beer in terms of the malty side of things and the adjuncts, but yeah. So on the hoppy side of things, definitely a nice little bit of earthiness there. You can pick out the grassy and floral qualities, and as is typical with Bramling's Cross, you've got these lovely kind of fruity notes to the beer as well. So I would say there's a nice little bit of a kind of plummy, raisiny sharpness to the beer, but after that it starts to get really juicy. I mean, there's figgy notes in there, there's a little bit of blackcurrant, a little bit of blackberries and stuff like that. It kind of has everything that you would expect of a typical imperial stout. But like I say, the level of complexity in the aroma here is impressive when you consider that it is only 7.4% alcohol. So yeah, let's just leave the aroma at that just now. As I always say, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But let's have a taste of this one now. This one is the Jaggery Imperial Stout at 7.4% from Merchant City Brewing Company, based in Maryhill and the Merchant City through in Glasgow. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's really pretty nice actually. Yeah. It's the first thing that strikes me about this beer is a lot of the flavours and complexities in this beer are really coming out in the aftertaste. I think this is one of these beers where it is all about the aftertaste rather than the kind of up front part of the taste, if that makes sense. But I have to say, this beer does get a thumbs up from me. I like this one. It just takes you a little bit of time to kind of realise the full extent of what's going on in here. So yeah, let's try and break the flavour of this one down again. So straight away you can feel those nice kind of roasty black malts just going right across the middle of the tongue. Did it say there was carafa malt in here? Because it does almost, no, there's not carafa in here. I'm surprised at that, to be honest. But I was just going to say, the kind of smoothness you get out of this one reminds me of the Vireman carafa malt. But I mean, if it's got oats in it, and it's got wheat, then you are going to get that smoothness in there. So the oats and the wheat will be combining a little bit with the coffee in this one, and it almost gives you the impression of that lovely carafa malt that you can get from Vireman. That's a very good malt that to use in Schwarz beers and things like that. So this Imperial Stout really has the sort of smoothness you'd expect of some of these checked Mavi beers, or as they're known by their German pseudonyms, the German Schwarz beers. It really has a little element of that to it in the middle of the palate. So yeah, you can feel that nice roasty black malt quality. That blankets the middle of your tongue. On top of it though, you can really feel the sort of bready qualities there. It almost comes across as like a really well-fired hedgehog roll, like a well-fired bread crust kind of thing. On top of that though, you can really feel those lovely coffee bean notes just infused into that. In the flavour, it really comes across as being quite a well toasted coffee, like quite earthy, but the further you go into the aftertaste, you can feel that coffee flavour just evolve, and it really becomes more of a sort of floral aromatic coffee. But you can feel the nice, you can really feel the nice kind of roasty, earthy base of the coffee just lingering there. In the very centre of your palate, there's a nice kind of, how do you say, you can really pick up those brown sugary notes. It's not caramelly or anything like that. It's not really overly oily and overly sweet. It's just like a kind of toasty brown sugar, and I think that works really well with it, to be honest. The way that all the flavours in this beer go together are really nice, and like I say, there is a hell of a lot of flavour to this one, and it's quite surprising how complex this beer is when you consider that it's 7.4% ABV. Yeah, I like this one. If you get the chance to try this, definitely check it out. I'd be very curious to see what some of the barrel aged versions of this beer are like, because obviously with something like this you can age it in all the different whiskey barrels, and all the different distilleries have their own kind of niches and stuff, like peaty whiskey, citrusy whiskey, sweet whiskies, all of these kind of things. Be curious to see how this one would turn out if you put it into one of the barrels from one of the more peated distilleries like Lefroy or something like that. This one's really nice. So yeah, but the brown sugars in the middle of your palate come across as quite light. There is a little bit of a kind of toasty element to it, but like I was describing with the aroma, it almost comes across as being a little bit sort of biscuity and wafery. So you really get that nice kind of just that lightness in the brown sugars there, and it just really sits there in the middle of the tongue. And I think some of the boozier aspects of this beer sort of give you that as well. If you go to the very centre of your palate and come forward from it, you will pick out a little bit of a kind of nutty flavour, and if you just go to the front corners of your palate too and move inside, you will find a few sort of woody undertones to the beer as well. I'm not really picking out, I thought this beer might be a little bit leathery or tobacco-y in its flavour, but it really, I could see why some people might think it's a bit tobacco-y, but I'm not, I don't smoke obviously, so it's not something I know too much about. I've never chewed tobacco or anything like that. But this one really has a lot of complexity to it for such a low alcohol beer. It's strange to say that for something that's 7.4%, but for the style it is definitely lower in alcohol. So yeah, the malt base and the way the adjuncts and stuff go together in this one is really quite nice. So yeah, just pay attention to the malt base in this one as you go through it, but as you go further into the flavour it does dry out a little bit, but at the same time it really sweetens up and you start to get more of the brown sugars and more of the sweeter aspects actually out of the kind of coffee notes, and the chocolate I think progresses to be a little bit kind of sweeter as well. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate you've got a nice quite strong earthiness to the beer actually, and that'll be the Bramlin's Cross. English hops do have quite a distinctive slightly darker earthiness to them compared to say German noble hops or Czech Sats or the American high alpha acid hops, that you can really feel that dark earthiness there. But as you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, that just smooths out a little bit. You do get a nice little bit of a kind of floral aromaticity on the front corners of the tongue, then around the very front curve of the palate it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, but then behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer, and for me that's where you get the some of the really interesting parts of the beer too. So yeah, when you take this beer in the beginning initially, it has a little bit of a kind of stronger, slightly sharper, plummy raisin kind of quality to it. But the further you go into the aftertaste, it starts to evolve and become a little bit more like blackberries, black currants kind of thing. And then when you're really progressing into the aftertaste, like about this time, you've seen how long it was since I took a sip, that's when you start to get the kind of juicier figgy notes, and some of the sharpness from the plums and raisins really starts to push its way out again as well. So it's got a really interesting transition, this beer, in terms of the fruitiness. But I think the interesting thing about this one compared to others is the way that the coffee comes out, and also the way that that interacts with the brown sugary side of the beer. The way the sugarcane notes come out of this beer is really quite interesting. But I have to say, Merchant City Brewing have done a really quite good job of this one, so big thumbs up to them for that. This is one of the more complex stouts that you're going to come across that is lower on the alcohol scale. I mean, you can get stouts that are 5-6% and things like that. This one, is it right to say that it's in the middle of the scale? But I mean, regardless, it's a really quite nice beer, this one, and definitely check it out for yourself if you get the chance. Flavour wise, can't really fault this at all. I think they've done an awesome job here. If we compare it to other stouts as well, I would say that this one kind of sits, it leans towards the roasty toasty side of things because of the coffee that's in there, but it's one of the sweeter coffee stouts I think that you're going to come across in that sense too. So if you like your Imperial stouts roasty toasty but on the sweeter end of roasty toasty, this is one that is going to suit you quite well. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I would describe this beer as being mid-bodied. That's the one thing about it, is that it's not the heaviest of beers in terms of its mouthfeel, and again that's something that's quite impressive about it, that it has such complexity, but it does retain a relatively light mouthfeel compared to other Imperial Stouts. So yeah, you've got a nice roasty, toasty, smooth base to it. The mouthfeel overall, I think, is at the bottom end of mid-body, to be honest. Carbonation does have a little bit of crispness to it. The mouthfeel overall is quite wet for a stout beer, to be honest with you. This one isn't the thickest of stouts that you're going to come across. I think part of that is due to, again, to the quality of water that we have in Scotland. Our water it really just has a slightly wetter feel to it compared to other places. I've said the same about Norwegian and Icelandic beers before, as well as some of the Irish ones that I've been reviewing recently. And the quality of the water just makes the beers feel that little bit wetter, actually. So that's something just to remember with the Scottish beers generally. The malt base has a really good balance between being roasty and smooth. The coffee really gives you that balance in there. It's got a little bit of sweetness that comes out further into the aftertaste. In terms of the bitterness of this beer, I think we're talking about 60, maybe even 70 IBUs with this one. Some of that bitterness, of course, coming from the malt base, some of it coming from the hops. And I think that combines to give you a total of around 60 or 70 IBUs. And of course there's a nice sort of juicy fruitiness to it also. But a really, really interesting beer. As I said, really quite complex for a beer that's only 7.4% ABV. One of the more complex low alcohol stouts that you're going to come across. So big thumbs up to Merchant City Brewing Company for that. They've done an awesome job here. But let's leave it at that for this beer. One that really I think you need to have a go at for yourself and see how you go on. If you like coffee stouts, you're going to enjoy this. If you like roasty and toasty Imperial Stouts, you'll enjoy this too. And if you enjoy if you like your coffee and roasty stouts to be just that little bit sweeter, then this is one that you're going to enjoy as well. It's really very well balanced, so check it out for yourself and just see what you get on. But I've been impressed with this first beer that I've had from Merchant City Brewing, so hopefully it's not the last one that I come across. So yeah, that'll definitely be something. This will definitely be a brewery that I keep an eye on in the future and see if I can review more from. So thumbs up to Merchant City Brewing for this beer. But so let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Merchant City Brewing as well, and I'm sure I'll return to these guys in the near future. Until the next time, slange you just now, and I'll catch you guys very soon. The Jaggery Imperial Stout at 7.4% from Merchant City Brewing through in Glasgow here in Scotland. Thank you again for watching. Make sure you check out my social media, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slange you, skull, cheers.